Hello,
شكرا.
everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight and welcome to our exclusive talk with Professor Haidar Eid, the Gaza Genocide, Personal Experience and Decolonizing the Palestinian Mind. My name is Najwan Berqdar. I am a team member at Zukhrot, and I'll be moderating the talk tonight. As we gather here today, I'm really filled with the sense of gratitude to welcome each and every one of you to this significant event in the midst of these challenging times marked by profound pain and hardship. It is truly a privilege to come together to shed light on an issue that demands our urgent attention and action and unwavering solidarity. I want to use this opportunity to thank you on behalf of Zukhrot team and family for your ongoing support, solidarity, and commitment, which enables our work every day and amplifies our efforts. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to extend a warm gratitude and a warm welcome to our distinguished guest, a survivor of the Gaza Genocide, Professor Haidar Eid. Professor Zaid's presence here today is not only a testament to his remarkable expertise and intellect, but also a reminder of the resilience of the unwavering spirit of the Palestinian people. Despite enduring unimaginable loss and hardship, Professor Eid has remained steadfast in his commitment to advocating for justice and liberation. As Associate Professor of Postcolonial and Postmodern Literature at Gaza's al-Aqsa University, Professor Eid brings a wealth of knowledge and insight to our discourse. His extensive writing on the Palestinian struggle, published in renowned outlets, have served as a beacon of truth in the face of oppression and injustice. But beyond his academic accomplishments, Professor Eid's personal experience offers a profound and deeply moving perspective on the reality of life in Gaza. Having lived under siege, endured the ravages of numerous wars, witnessed the destruction of his own university where he works, losing loved ones and being displaced multiple times, all of these stand as a stark reminder of the human cost of oppression and occupation that mostly the people of Gaza are paying for. In the face of such adversity, Professor Eid's courage and resilience are nothing short of inspiring. His latest book, Decolonizing the Palestinian Mind, stands as a testament to his ongoing commitment to challenging oppressive structures and envisioning a future of justice and equality for all. Let us extend our deepest gratitude to Professor Eid for joining us live from South Africa, where he has been forcibly displaced recently, and kindly sharing his own personal experience and invaluable insight with us today. Without further ado, I pass on the mic to Haidar. تفضل أستاذ حيدر والحمد لله على السلامة كمان مرة.
Allah يسلمك. Thank you so much, Najwan, and thank you to Zukhrot, and thank you to the organizers of this event. It's an honor to be with you. I mean, I feel I can smell Palestine here in South Africa now that I'm talking to you in Palestine. Actually, you know, I've been displaced 4 times actually since the 7th of October, since the beginning of the ongoing genocide in Gaza. And I've been talking all over the country here, speaking to press internationally and locally here in South Africa as well. And every single time, and this coincided with the release of my book, as you've mentioned, Najwan, titled Decolonizing the Palestinian Mind. And you know, at every event, I would start by, you know, emphasizing the importance of talking about Gaza. You know, we need voices and we need to hear voices from Gaza. And for me personally, Gaza is a priority because as we are speaking, people are being annihilated, literally here. People are being killed. You know, and I will talk about figures later on, even though I don't like to talk about figures, because every single person, every single victim in Gaza has a story to tell, has a family, has, you know, a love affair, you know, has so many things to say to us. And I've made it my duty to try to tell some of those stories. I've lost so many loved ones. I've lost so many relatives. I've lost so many colleagues and students. And I think, you know, it is my duty to tell their stories. And I think, you know, it's very important to contextualize what is happening in Gaza. But I'd rather start by telling you my personal story, because as I said, I've been displaced, 4 times, and I spent the first 2 months in Gaza. I was in Gaza itself, or rather in the Gaza Strip itself, I was displaced 3 times. And this is my 4th displacement in South Africa. And I want to take you back to January 2006. In fact, I decided to return to Gaza and start, a new academic career at al-Aqsa University in 2005. Now, in January 2006, the people, of the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, that is to say 1/3 of the Palestinian people, were asked to head to the polling stations in order to vote for their representatives, in the Legislative Council. The Legislative Council being one of the Oslo institutions. It represents only the Palestinians of the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. At the time, if you remember, George Bush promised the peoples of the Arab world of spreading democracy after destroying Iraq. And the people of the Gaza Strip and the West Bank went to the polling stations and they decided to vote. And when they voted against the will of the Israelis. They voted against the will of the United States of America. They voted against the Oslo Accords. And they voted against the racist 2-state solution. And because of that, apartheid Israel, and allow me to say genocidal Israel. I used to say apartheid Israel, and now I'm saying genocidal Israel, decided to impose a deadly medieval siege on the people of the Gaza Strip for daring to vote against its will, for daring to vote against, the racist 2-state solution. I was there, I witnessed the siege. And I remember days when we couldn't buy milk for our children. Apartheid, genocidal Israel at the time decided even to count the calories that we were allowed to use in order to survive. We didn't have electricity. 97% of Gaza's water became undrinkable. And that has been going on. Of course, we didn't have medicine. We were not allowed to import cows, cars, chocolate, cigarettes, papers, books, you name it. Nothing at all. We couldn't drive our cars. And as if that was not enough, that started in January 2006. According to United Nations and international human rights organizations, they say that the siege started in, July 2007. But, I beg to differ with that. Well, I was there and I can tell you about it. And as if that was not enough, genocidal Israel decided to launch a massive attack against the Gaza Strip for 18 days in 2008. I remember on the 27th of December, 2008, I was driving my car and I passed by the main police headquarters. That was at 11:15. 11:25, Israel decided to launch a massive attack. Within 3 minutes, from Rafah in the south to Beit Hanun in the north, within 3 minutes, killing more than 270 people. And they chose a time when school children were going, we have two school shifts. Children were going back home from school and the other children were going to school. So many children were killed at the time. I remember it. For 18 days, killing more than 1,200 people, including more than 430 children. I was there. And as if that was not enough, and because the international community decided to do absolutely nothing about it. Now, we were naive at the time. We Palestinians are naive, in fact. We called on the international community to intervene. We called on the international community to do something at the time. The international community was deaf and did absolutely nothing. And that sent a very strong message to apartheid Israel that it could go on carrying out, committing war crimes and crimes against humanity with full impunity. And this is why apartheid Israel decided to do the same thing in 2012, within a week, killing more than 200 people. I remember that very well, because the day apartheid Israel decided, excuse me, to launch its massive attack, I was also driving my car from al-Aqsa University campus in Khan Younis, what used to be al-Aqsa University. Now we don't have al-Aqsa University campus, it's finished. Apartheid Israel decided to destroy the two beautiful campuses of al-Aqsa University. At the time, in 2012, I was driving also my car coming back home from Khan Younis. I live in Gaza. And on the way from Khan Younis, I heard explosions. And that was the beginning of Israel's second massive attack within 4 years. Within a week, genocidal Israel killed 200 people, including more than 67 children at the time. So we thought that the international community would do something. But the international community at the time blamed both sides, the colonizer and the colonized, the oppressor and the oppressed. And this is why apartheid Israel, for the third time, decided to repeat the same scenario in 2014. In 2014, and this time for 51 days. I was there too. And I remember in 2008, in 2012, and in 2014, I was contacted by the South African embassy in Ramallah asking me whether I wanted to leave Gaza. And I said no, because I have a South African passport. And I said no, I wanted to stay with my people. And for 51 days, every single day, airstrikes, artillery shells, you name it, 51 days, leaving us with 2,200 victims, including more than 600 children and women. And what did the international community do? Absolutely nothing. Move forward, still under siege, a hermetic medieval siege, move forward to 2017, 18, 19, when we decided as civil society to start the Great March of Return. We decided to march on the eastern barbed wire of the Gaza Strip, reminding the international community of United Nations Resolution 194, calling for our right of return. 2/3 of the Gaza Strip are refugees, including myself and my family, entitled to our right of return in accordance with international law, in accordance with the United Nations Resolution 194. And I used to go every single Friday, reminding the international community of its responsibility. And apartheid Israel killed 270 civilians at the time for daring to protest non-violently. The international community again decided to be deaf. Moved to 2021, again, apartheid Israel attacked the Gaza Strip. So all these massacres, 5 massacres, and the medieval siege committed by genocidal Israel, even the genocide itself, our friend Ilan Pappé, the courageous, conscientious, anti-Zionist Israeli activist, called it incremental genocide. and the international community did absolutely nothing, nothing. And this is why, after the 7th of October, genocidal Israel decided, with the complicity of the international community, and now not only complicity, with the direct involvement of imperial powers and the colonial West, to launch, and for the first time in history, a genocide in real time. Everybody can just watch what is happening on Facebook, on Al Jazeera, on Al Arabi. So far, more than 32,000 people have been killed. I spent the first 2 months there. In the second week of the genocide, I was contacted by a racist Zionist intelligence officer asking me to leave the neighborhood, a Rimal neighborhood. I used to live in a residential tower. I live on the 10th floor. At the time, when I was contacted by that intelligence officer, he asked me to head to the north because they were killing people in the north. That was the reason why we, the residents of a Rimal neighborhood, were asked to go to the north. At the time, I decided to take refuge with my neighbors. I have two little kids, 7 and 6 years old, and my wife. So we decided to spend the night with our neighbor. We were not aware of what was going to happen at the time, and it was the first time that the first time during this genocide for apartheid Israel to use what they call, it's carpet bombing, in fact, carpet bombing. They called, a belt fire in Arabic, Hizam Nari, where they, continuous airstrikes, destroying, an entire neighborhood. We didn't know that at the time. So we stayed with our neighbors. We were about, 4 to 5 families, and we were stuck in a tiny passage, about 30 to 35 people, And at the time I had to, because I have 2 little kids, I had to close the ears of my kids and put, wet towels on their mouths. And I paid a heavy price. I lost my hearing. I still cannot hear in my right ear, and I can hear only about 50 or to 60%, actually, my left ear. So I'm almost completely deaf here, my right ear. And I'm not complaining, because honestly and seriously, this is nothing compared to what I would see afterwards, and to the losses. Entire families were wiped out, still are being wiped out. I have lost, after that, 40 of my cousins together with their families. Again, I'm not complaining, because I shouldn't complain. I'm just telling my personal story, because when I listen to other people's story, I just try to shut up. Because after that, the following day, when we left the house of our neighbor, thank God we were still alive, and we got the shock of our life to find out that that's actually my neighbor. Because you might ask, how come I stayed with my neighbors? My neighbors, on the opposite road, they stay in the Tell el-Hawa neighborhood. And that night, the Israelis decided to attack the Rimal neighborhood. There is a street separating Rimal from Tell el-Hawa. Anyway, the following day I found out that, almost nothing was left of my flat. The building is, the residential tower is still standing, but, all the flats, all the windows, all the doors, all the walls, everything was down. Everything was turned into, again, if you ask any Gazan now, what is the most hated word in Gaza, in Arabic, and it is anqad, rubble, anqad. And it's our nightmare still until today. Because of the thunder in Johannesburg now, my kids keep crying and shouting because I mean, I don't know, I'm sure you understand. And my kids keep asking, I mean, are we going to wake up under the rubble? You know, even my wife keeps asking the same question. So the following day, of course, we couldn't stay in our flat. It's almost gone. So we moved to the north to Sheikh Radwan in Gaza, to stay with my brother. And 3 days after that, the same scenario was repeated. So that night in Rimal was the most horrific night of my life because I didn't know that there were worse nights still to come. So 3 days after my arrival with my family in Sheikh Radwan, more than 1.1 million Gazans in Gaza City and northern part of Gaza, of the Gaza Strip, were asked to evacuate and move to the south, to the middle areas, which consists of the middle camps and Khan Yunis and Rafah. So we moved again to Rafah, and that day we saw we never thought, I don't belong to the Nakba generation. You know, people, you know, understand what I'm talking about, what happened in 1948 with the establishment of apartheid Israel. We paid an extremely heavy price. Still, we are paying an extremely heavy price. The refugees of Gaza, 2/3 of Gazans are refugees. And this is the reason why apartheid Israel is targeting Gaza, to finish the job. To finish the job of 1948, an ongoing Nakba. So we moved to Rafah. And what we saw on our way to Rafah, I mean, I'm in my late 50s, and I never imagined that the Nakba would be allowed to happen again. And that day, from Gaza to the south, was just a repeat of the Nakba. In fact, the Nakba generation, those who are still alive, told us it is worse. And I take their word for that. We moved to Rafah. And on the first night, and I don't want to, you know, dwell on what happened on the way from Gaza to Rafah. I don't want to dwell on that. But on, you know, our first night in Rafah, they attacked a house adjacent to my sister's house where I was staying for 2 months. And I would never forget that night. And it happened more than once, actually. They are still attacking Rafah. I'm sure people who are following the news know what I'm talking about. And I'm telling you, with honesty, the worst part of it is the children. The children. I mean, because you don't know what to do in order to protect the children. And, you know, when the shelling and the airstrikes take place, I mean, you just hug them, you try to protect them. I mean, we used to sleep, you know, myself. I mean, we were about, you know, 5 to 6 families together. And we had our room, myself, you know, my wife and my kids. We would put our 2 kids between us, because if something happens at night, I would jump and just protect them, you know, with my body. So that night, I remember, you know, the following day, we looked at, we visited the house that was attacked, rubble, completely rubble, and 7 people were killed. And people managed to take out 5 of those dead. And there were still 2 young men. And I remember it, the name was written, Hussam Taht al-Anqad. Hussam is still under the rubble. The name of the young man who was about, you know, who was about to marry, I was told. He was still under the rubble, and he was under the rubble for 2 weeks. For 2 weeks. And this is just one of the stories. And I feel that, every single time people ask me to talk about my book, to talk about political solutions, no, I don't want to theorize. I mean, we don't have the luxury in Gaza to theorize and to have a debate, because are being annihilated. Since the beginning of this event until now, 3 kids have been killed. 3 kids have been killed. And the world is watching. The world is watching. It's a deadly silence. And again, the world is not complicit. And now I will move to a little bit of, political analysis of what is happening. I know Raneen, Rachel, Najwan have asked me to do that. Like people who invite me to give talks. Yesterday, I gave a talk at the University of Johannesburg with people who wanted me to theorize. Sorry, I don't want to begin by theorizing. I want to begin by telling you about our lived experience. What is going on right now in Gaza. My family is living in a tent right now. It's living in a tent. And so people need to understand, we need an immediate ceasefire. Immediate. We can't start, we can't wait for the Security Council. We can't wait for the enablers of the genocide, Genocidal Joe, the UK, Europe. No, we cannot wait because they don't want to do anything. So it is left for us. And South Africa has decided to say enough is enough. And that's why they decided to go to the ICJ. And I will allude to that at a later stage. But I needed to tell you about what is happening. So I've been displaced 4 times until I was contacted by the South African government, by the South African embassy. And because of my kids, I decided to seize that opportunity. And, comrades all over the world were calling me and trying to convince me to leave. And in my 3rd displacement, I decided to accept the offer. And the only reason is the 2 little kids that I have. This is something that not every Gazan has. And under the pressure of comrades, my BDS comrades, my One State comrades, my solidarity, I decided to accept it only for the 2 kids that I have, because they have no choice. So I think, Najwan, that this is enough about my personal experience, And I want to move to talk a little bit, about, my personal analysis. I really believe, people keep asking me, 7th of October and what happened to the 7th of October. Life on Earth did not begin on the 7th of October. And for people who believe in God, Adam was not sent to Earth on the 7th of October. There is a context. And that context, and I can take you back to the 19th century. And if you don't like that, and you don't like history like Americans say, no, don't talk about history. Well, at least I can take you back to 1948, because you are talking to a refugee. My parents were refugees from Zarnuga village. Both died in 2005 in the Nusayrat refugee camp. I was born in the Nusayrat refugee camp. It's a transition. It's a transition, because they died believing, still holding the key, by the way, and I left the key in Gaza, believing that they would return. They would return to the Zarnuga village, because the Palestinian question is the right of return. Palestine is not the one defined by the signatories of the Oslo Accords. And that is my book. My book is about the failure of Palestinian nationalism. It's a sort of radical critique of Palestinian nationalism as defined by the Palestinian bourgeoisie, which unfortunately reduced the Palestinian people to only those who live in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. And in order to solve the Palestinian question, all you should do, the international community, is to grant the Palestinian people, that is to say, 1/3 of the Palestinian people living in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, a Bantustan, naming it a sovereign independent Palestinian state. Luckily, I'm speaking to you from South Africa, from Johannesburg. The apartheid system in the 60s, 70s, and 80s decided to grant some native Africans 4 Bantustans. They called them independent homelands. And our Palestinian nationalist movement is fighting for an independent Palestinian state in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. Gaza, and because I'm talking about Gaza and what's happening in Gaza, Gaza is supposed to be one of the 2 blocks making, manufacturing, constructing the independent Palestinian state. In January 2006, the people of Gaza and the West Bank knew very well that that is not going to happen. Israel has made it an impossibility. It is impossible to have a sovereign, independent Palestinian state on 22% of historic Palestine. In other words, Israel has made the construction of a Bantustan impossible. Impossible. People ask me, well, was Gaza, or rather, is Gaza a Bantustan? Well, between 1993 and 2000, the Palestinian leadership, the right-wing leadership of the PLO, accepted the construction of a Bantustan in Gaza and the construction of 3 Bantustans in the West Bank. So in a way, Gaza became a semi-Bantustan between 1993, the date of the signing of the Oslo Accords, and 2000, with the eruption of the Second Intifada. But after that, and especially after 2006, Gaza became, according to human rights organizations, according to Gisha in Israel, according to B'Tselem in Israel, according to Amnesty International, according to human rights organizations, you name it, Gaza was transformed into an open-air prison. Personally, I call it, at the time, the largest concentration camp on earth. Now, I call it an extermination camp. An extermination camp. Reminding the world, I know some people may not like that, but I have to say it. Whether you like it or you don't like it, I don't care. It's larger than Auschwitz. What is happening in Gaza right now is Holocaust 2. The difference is that it is taking place in real time. You are watching it. You are watching it in real time. Now, what are we supposed to do? And Najwan, please stop me if you want me to stop, right? You remind me, because I don't know, I think I've been talking for half an hour now.
I think you can have another 10 minutes, it's fine.
I can have another 10 minutes, all right. Because I really need to say that. I mean, I remember when Joe Biden won the presidential election in the United States, about four years ago, there were some hopes, and I'm sure some of people who are watching us right now they must have, voted for Joe Biden. Why? Because they wanted to vote against Donald Trump. So there were some hopes within even the pro-Palestinian, movement that there would be a positive, I remember the words, a positive change in U.S. policy on Palestine, because Biden's predecessor, Donald Trump, had headed a fascist administration that had fully adopted the program and vision of Israel's fascist, far right, which is still in power in the United States, in genocidal Israel. It was believed that Donald Trump's administration, it was believed to be the worst American government for Palestinians until now. But today, Joe Biden has fully embraced Israel's genocidal aggression on Gaza. He has become, us Palestinians, pro-Palestinian supporters are calling him genocidal Biden. And this is why the possibility that he might lose the elections this year. He has approved the complete blockade that has cut off, electricity, water, food, as I said, medicine, and justifying the daily slaughter of thousands of Palestinian civilians. And what I want to say is that Palestinians are not just being shot. We are not talking only about airstrikes. We are not only talking about artillery shelling. We are talking about deliberate starvation. Palestinians of Gaza are deliberately and intentionally being starved. I remember when I was there, I remember the story of Jana Qudeh, for example, a 10 years old girl, beautiful child, 10 years old. I was in Gaza at the time, not now. People are now talking about starvation, because I remember nights when my two little kids, there were nights when they asked me for food and I couldn't provide them with food. Jana Qudeh, for 3 days, begged her father, begged literally, that's what her father told us, begged her father for a crumb of bread, and he couldn't. On the 4th day, Jana died. Jana died. She starved to death. And that is what the Americans are doing right now. People are saying Israel, without the full support and direct involvement of the colonial West, headed by the United States of America, would not have been able to carry out the ongoing genocide in Gaza right now. So I just want to say that it's not only Israel, it's the United States of America, it's the UK, it's France, it is the colonial West. The US position vis-a-vis the Palestinians is reminiscent of the attitude of its first, this is my argument, of its first European settlers towards Native Americans. Towards Native Americans. We are nothing. We are not human beings. We are just nuisance. When we cry, we just create noise and we have to shut up. That's what the United States of America thinks about, Palestinians. I want just to allude a little bit to the South African, case, at the ICJ. This is what Najwan, told me to talk about. I think it's clear that post-apartheid South Africa decided, of course, for the first time in history, to take a practical position against the perpetrators of the genocide in Gaza. I think there is a much wider ideological context also, one of apartheid and settler colonialism. I think what Israel has been committing in Gaza is, yes, genocide, but also ethnic cleansing. Israel, right from day one. You can go back to statements made by the president of the country, the prime minister of the country, the minister of finance of the country, you know, almost all Israeli ministers. Israel now is not only a Zionist state, is not only an apartheid state, Israel is a fascist state. Israel is a fascist state. And I think it's very obvious for anybody watching the news, following what is happening, that Israel is intent on killing all Palestinians of Gaza. If it cannot do that, it wants to ethnically cleanse for the second time the Palestinians of Gaza. Egypt is refusing to accept that. I'm not justifying with the Egyptian government. Egypt is refusing to open the Rafah crossing. But you have 2.4 million refugees living in the Gaza Strip, reminding apartheid Israel of the original sin taking place back in 1948. So Israel wants to finish the job. Now, post-apartheid Israel, post-apartheid South Africa has decided to say enough is enough. But since the ICJ ruling calling on Israel to take provisional measures, etc., to put an end to the ongoing genocide, apartheid Israel has killed more than 3,700 people. So that is not putting an end to the ongoing genocide. We, us, you, me, solidarity groups here in South Africa, the BDS movement, and here I'm not having a debate. And if anybody wants to have a debate, please, I'm not going to have a debate here. We need to take concrete steps to immediate ceasefire, flow of humanitarian aid, not the farce of airlifting humanitarian aid, dropping a drop in the ocean. Gaza has 7 crossings controlled by genocidal Israel. 6 crossings are directly controlled by apartheid Israel. The 7th crossing is the Rafah crossing. There are thousands of trucks waiting to be allowed by the government of Egypt and by apartheid genocidal Israel and by the Americans, to enter into Gaza. Thousands, more than 2,000 trucks full of humanitarian aid. And now the Americans want to drop, a loaf of bread on 2.4 million starving Palestinians in Gaza. So it is left to us, people to people solidarity. Besiege Israeli embassies wherever they are. Besiege American embassies wherever they are. Boycott Israeli products. Divest from apartheid genocidal Israel. We want to sanction apartheid Israel. We need a military embargo. Israel is using F-15, F-16s, Apache helicopters, Merkava tanks, all of which are made in the United States of America and in the West. We need a military embargo. Exactly, the international community needs to treat apartheid Israel the same way it treated the apartheid regime of South Africa. What we are witnessing in Palestine right now, in the words of the anti-apartheid activists, from the late Archbishop Tutu to my comrade Ronnie Kasserls, what we are witnessing now is far, far worse than what the blacks of South Africa had witnessed in the heydays of apartheid. So thank you so much. And thank you, Najwan and Rachel. Sorry, can you hear me, Najwan? I can't hear you. Yeah. I think you are muted, Najwan. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry,
yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I froze just when you finished. Thank you, Haidar. for this very informative, difficult talk. I know it's not easy for you to tell your experience over and over again, but we're very grateful to have you here and for you to share with us this very difficult experience. I wanna, obviously, I wanted to actually hear about your personal experience more than anything, because this is actually the title of this event, and this is what we want to hear. And I'm sure there is no debate about the kind of resistance we should all be part of, we should all take part in, and the responsibility we should all take. As Palestinian, as the international community, as Jews, as Israeli Jews as well, who have acknowledged the Nakba and are working to redress the historical crimes, which are no longer historical, they're ongoing, but even in an escalation that we would never imagine. I'm gonna take the first question. Lena is
sorry, just a comment, please, Najwan. I'm not going to respond to any Zionist intervention at all. I'm not going to respond, to anybody asking about, 7th of October or not. It's not my thing. It's my personal experience and my analysis of what's going on. And if there is any question, I'm not looking at the chats, and so I leave it to you to choose and to pick up the, useful questions, something that I can answer. I'm not here for any debates, by the way.
Yeah, so hopefully we will not find anyone in our community that will ask Zionist questions or about October 7th specifically without context. Lena is asking, I think you partially, or you kind of answered this question, but I don't know if you want to elaborate more. But she's asking what and who will compel the Israelis to stop their genocidal rampage.
Again, no, it's a very good question indeed. I alluded to it as you've just mentioned, Najwan. I think, if Lena, and I'm sure Lena, judging by the name, I assume that she's an Arab and she's Palestinian. I'm sure that she knows that Palestinian civil society issued a statement back in 2005 calling on the international community to boycott apartheid Israel, divest from apartheid Israel, and from international companies benefiting from Israel's oppression of the Palestinian people, and imposing sanctions against apartheid Israel until it complies with international law. What I can tell you is that there is almost an overwhelming consensus amongst Palestinian civil society, including political forces, by the way, that have endorsed our, BDS call. I think to answer directly, in South Africa, what happened is that it took the international community more than 30 years to heed the call made by the oppressed South Africans. I was not born in the late 50s, but we know history. The South Africans called on the international community to boycott the apartheid system, in the apartheid regime in the late 50s, I think 1958 or 1959. And it took the international community more than 30 years to heed that call. And the momentum was given to the BDS call against the apartheid regime after the Sharpeville massacre in 1961, when about 69 Black South Africans were killed by the racist white policemen of South Africa. And that gave a momentum to the BDS movement against the apartheid regime. Move forward to the Soweto Intifada, Soweto uprising in 1976, 1977. Another station in the struggle against the apartheid regime, accumulation until the mid-80s. Even, Lena, in the mid-80s, older people now remember Margaret Thatcher calling calling Nelson Mandela a terrorist. 1987, Ronald Reagan calling the ANC a terrorist organization. And both of them, the colonial West, no wonder. By the way, Nelson Mandela's name was taken off the terrorist list, the American terrorist list, only in 2008. I mean, he became a president and he retired, still his name was on the terrorist list. And only the answer is only because of the intervention of the international community, a total and complete isolation of the apartheid regime. And this is the scenario that we are hoping will happen now. Yes, Najwan.
Thank you, Haidar. I think a very relevant and related question by an anonymous attendee. How do you see us as Palestinian people reclaiming our destiny and overcoming the genocide? And maybe I will connect to this another question. Shahira is asking, Canada just passed a motion in Parliament calling for a ceasefire and supplies going into Gaza and embargo on arms to Israel. Do you think this will make a difference?
Look, I mean, to answer directly, again, I will give very direct answers. There is something about us Palestinians. We are very talkative. So I will try to be, again, I said the same thing yesterday to my South African comrades here, that this is one thing that we have in common with South Africa, that we talk a lot. And then this is why I will try, Najwan, if you allow me to give just brief and direct answer, sorry. Look, we are witnessing a paradigm shift. Most of us don't feel that. People later on can tell you that there was a paradigm shift. That happened in South Africa in the 80s. I alluded to, to Margaret Thatcher's, terrible racist statement of Nelson Mandela being, terrorist, etc., etc. People at the time did not feel that radical change happening. That was, for South Africans, the darkest moment that precedes the dawn. They didn't feel that the dawn was approaching, that a new day was approaching. And that new day actually took place in 1990, because in the late 80s, South African townships became ungovernable. Every single white person felt isolated wherever they went in the world. I was an anti-apartheid activist. I boycotted South African products. I joined demonstrations holding posters calling for freedom of Nelson Mandela. And that happened in 1990. So you have the Sharpeville massacre, you have the Soweto massacre, you have the massacres of the townships. South Africa became ungovernable in the late 90s. Mandela was released in 1990. We couldn't believe it. We couldn't believe it. Older generation know this very well. And then 1994, Mandela became the first Black president of multiracial South Africa. And this is what we are witnessing right now. There is a paradigm shift. It is the darkest moment in Palestinian history. But there is a shift in the narrative. And within this context, we can understand what's happening in Canada now. Canada is a racist country. But there is a shift. South Africa has taken apartheid Israel to the ICJ. The world knows that Israel is committing a genocide. Nicaragua, Bolivia, Cuba, Venezuela, Chile, Brazil, you name it, even Belgium. Norwegian universities are severing, cutting their academic ties with Israeli academic institutions. South African universities are going to take similar motions. So there is something happening. At the same time, politically speaking, everybody knows that the two-state solution is a racist solution. Nobody is talking about the two-state solution. Only the United States of America, the Palestinian leadership, and some Israeli, liberal Zionists are trying, to resurrect a dead solution, a racist solution. But across the globe, I'm telling you, I've been talking to people. I can tell you more than 90% supporters of Palestine are talking about a secular democratic state after the collapse of the racist apartheid regime in Palestine.
Thank you, Haidar. We have a question from Harold. He's asking you to comment on the comparison with the South Africa apartheid, whether it's accurate or not, because the whites wanted to keep the blacks alive to exploit their labor. The Zionists wants to be rid of the Palestinians.
Okay, buy my book and you will get the answer. All right, now, you don't have to buy the book, but so many people have written about the parallels between South Africa, the apartheid regime in South Africa and Israel. Look, when we call Israel an apartheid country, I remember when I returned to Palestine, to Gaza back in 2005, and I said, apartheid Israel, people, I was reprimanded. Even by some supporters of Palestine at the time, by the way, saying, no, don't use the A word. Now, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, B'Tselem, Israel's mainstream human rights organization. I don't want to say Zohorot, of course, because I don't want to promote Zohorot. My comrades, Zohorot. Even United Nations organizations like the ISQA are calling Israel an apartheid state. And what I'm saying, this is an underestimation. In fact, every single apartheid law, excuse me, I'm losing my voice. I have been talking since I arrived in South Africa, in Najwan. Every single law in apartheid, the group, mixed marriage law, etc., all group areas laws, the Bantustans, all have equivalent law, basic laws in Israel. Israel has basic laws. I'm sure you know the person who asked me, and I can tell he really wants to know, but I'm not sure whether you know or not that Israel does not have a constitution. Israel has basic laws. Because if you ask Israel to have a constitution and you ask the international community to recognize Israel, Israel has to transform itself into the state of its citizens rather than the state of Jews only. The latest basic law is the infamous nation-state law in 2017, defining the state of Israel as the state of Jews. So what happens to Palestinians who were born in Israel? What happens to Najwan? Najwan is not even a second-class citizen. Najwan is a third or a fourth-class citizen in apartheid Israel. But in spite of all these similarities, all the laws, and you can go back to that, apartheid was about the exploitation of Black Africans, cheap labor. In Palestine, what you have, it is not about the exploitation of Palestinians and cheap labor. It's about the annihilation of the natives of Palestine, the promised land. I'm sure you are familiar with Zionist myths. A land without a people for a people without land. So you need to empty the land. And that can only happen by exterminating the natives. So I think, there are similarities and there are differences. That's in terms of the apartheid regime. But in terms of the struggle and resistance, and I can tell you, we have learned. We have land. We have, lessons from the anti-apartheid movement. The anti-apartheid struggle relied on they call them four pillars of struggle. One, the armed struggle. Two, political underground. Three, mass mobilization on the ground. Four, an international solidarity movement led by the BDS campaign. And this is what we are doing in Palestine. We've issued our BDS call and popular resistance. I think, I can go on and go on, Najwan, but I think you get the point.
Yeah. Yeah, Harold was asking more about the differences. He's very well aware of the similarities, but he was eager to know about the differences. We still have someone is asking what actual. So everyone wants to know what to do, I guess, but and we understand why. But the question is, what actual concrete steps can we take if we live in smaller towns that don't have Israeli consulates, US federal offices? Unfortunately, our city government in Asheville, NC, refused to call for a ceasefire. Yeah, so they're saying that there's a lot of lies about the Palestinians and Arabs and false statements, and they're not really sure what to do.
I think, I've already answered part of this question. I mean, if you're saying, in a town, you can contact, this other cities, and almost every country has a BDS movement, by the way, a BDS, and BDS campaigns. You have the global BDS movement steered and led by the Boycott National Committee in Palestine. We need to be clear about that. Yeah, all BDS campaigns all over the world come in response to the call of the oppressed Palestinian. I think we need to be clear about that. This is number one. Number two, everything that I have been saying, must come within a political vision. And I really need to emphasize that. And because you asked me to allude to my book, Najwan, as well, and Raneen wanted me to do that, is that I'm very critical of Palestinian nationalism, as I said, because I think Palestinian nationalism, in a way, has failed to lead that global movement against apartheid Israel. And this is why we are relying heavily on Palestinian civil society and the call issued in 2005. But again, we still need an alternative. We are talking about a paradigm shift, and that paradigm shift must be understood by the Palestinians in general. I'm not talking about the Palestinian leadership now, because the Palestinian leadership, excuse me, I think we will have to finish with one more question. I'm sure you understand.
We'll take one last question after this.
Yeah. I think, people need to understand that there is a combination. You have that international solidarity movement, and the best tool of showing solidarity with the Palestinians is BDS, boycott, divestment, and sanctions. But also, if you need to exert pressure on your representative. I assume that the person who asked this question lives in a liberal democratic country, a liberal democracy. And therefore he or she votes. And she or he has a representative. You need to contact your representative. And you ask him or her what he thinks about the genocide taking place right now in Palestine, in Gaza in particular. And what concrete step has he or she, taken in order to put an end to that crime? I personally, for example, I personally have not or have stopped consuming even American products since 2000. Since 2000, I don't buy American products. And I try to avoid buying products made in a country that supports apartheid Israel. It's a step that I feel that I can make a change. But I also, and I have managed, I believe, to convince so many of my friends to boycott anything that comes out of Israel. And now I'm in conversation, and I'm also part of the Palestinian campaign for the academic and cultural boycott of Israel, PAC-B, which, by the way, was established even before the Boycott National Committee. It was in 2004. The BDS call came in 2005. The Boycott National Committee was established in 2007. You know, we need to know our history when it comes to these things. And I think if you were living anywhere in the world, you can be in touch, you can be in contact with the BDS movement. Can we take one more question, Najwan?
Yes, Haidar.
Yeah.
We'll take one last question. Don't you think focus on apartheid risks overlooking the deep-rooted issue of Palestinian dispossession from their land, which began with the founding of Israel and to...
Sorry, Najwan, I'm losing you. And can you come again? Sorry. I think it got interrupted.
Yeah. So our last question is by Mohannad Abu Ghosh.
Mohannad, okay, my friend Mohannad, okay.
Yeah, this is why I mentioned his name to you.
Habibi Mohannad, okay. He's going to meet me in Johannesburg soon, all right.
So don't you think a focus on apartheid risks overlooking the deep-rooted issue of Palestinian dispossession from their land, which began with the founding of Israel and continues through settlement expansion, settler colonialism?
I think, no. I was very clear, Mohannad, and I think you also heard me when you came to that talk in Cape Town. I said it's far, far worse than apartheid. And I'm not saying we need only to concentrate on the apartheid dimension. Israel's oppression of the Palestinians is multi-tiered. It is multi-formed. One form is apartheid. So it is a combination of apartheid and settler colonialism and ethnic cleansing, and now it's genocide. And if you remember, I said what is happening in Gaza right now is far worse than apartheid. It is a combination of genocide and ethnic cleansing. But we cannot deny the apartheid dimension because Israel itself has learned from the apartheid regime. And remember, we need to use the international law, even though I am very critical of international law as defined by the colonial West after the Second World War. But we need to make use of the international law. According to international law, apartheid is a crime against humanity. In other words, Israel is committing a crime against humanity, and therefore the international community is obligated to boycott and has a responsibility to come in support of the oppressed Palestinians. I think that's enough for Mohannad, and we can discuss it later on, Mohannad.
Haidar, we have more questions, but we don't want to take more of your time. We understand that you've been talking ever since you left Gaza, and we really appreciate you being here with us. Actually, we know it's not easy time-wise and emotionally and mentally. So thank you very much. We're very grateful to have you, and Alhamdulillah Salami again. And for everyone else, we'll try to, we have your questions. We'll try to answer some of your questions by email as well, since you've all registered to the event. As Haidar has suggested many ways for you to take action. I think BDS groups and campaigns are across the globe, and everyone can participate in a campaign in a collective effort of targeted campaigns, but you can also practice BDS as an individual, as a consumer, and make your consumption a resistant practice on a daily basis. And there's websites that can let you know how you can practice this ethical consumption. So you can, I sent you the call for BDS on the website in the chat, so you can all use it, and there you can find many other resources as well. And again, from Nakba 48 to Nakba 67 to the ongoing wars on Gaza, the numerous wars on Gaza, to genocide 2023-2024, I think we have seen that the lack of accountability, the lack of responsibility has enabled what's happening now and what happened before. And I think this is the time for everyone watching the genocide live in real time to take direct action, to take responsibility, to redress the historical and ongoing crimes, to prevent worse crimes, because we thought we can never see worse, but every time we manage to see something beyond our imagination. We never thought we would witness the Nakba in 2023, but we witnessed what's worse than the Nakba according to many testimonies from survivors of the Nakba. So we urge everyone to think how they can take responsibility, how they can take direct action. And we wish everyone in Gaza safety, and we hope that everyone will be safe soon and that this will end as soon as possible, probably with your efforts. Thank you very much, and thank you for being here and for your continuous support. And thank you again, Haidar, for your time.
Shukran. Thank you. Cheers. Bye.
Bye-bye.